Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Today's show is brought to you by the award-winning Nordvpn. I've been using Nord for years now because it secures my internet traffic and keeps my data private, especially when traveling or on public Wi-Fi. Nordvpn has servers in over 60 countries, does not log your data, unlocks Netflix and other geographic restrictions on entertainment content, and has a 30-day money-back guarantee. To save 70% on a subscription, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com/NordVPN or use the promo code BTFuture. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Philip Inghelbrecht. He's the CEO and co-founder at Tatari. Philip, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show. You've done a crazy amount of stuff for basically a ton of really popular companies, and you founded a really popular startup. But maybe before we get into all that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I think you will hear this quickly. My accent is Belgian.
Very cool.
So, yep. I grew up in Belgium, pretty much lived there till I was 26 with a small stint in Luxembourg. And I actually only moved to the States to do my master's degree here at the University of California at Berkeley when I was 26.
Very cool. So
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what did you take in school and why?
My degree is in what is called commercial engineering. It's kind of a university program unique in Belgium, Germany, and France. So kind of you follow the civil engineering program for the first few years,
Okay.
and then rather than specializing in aeronautics or mechanical engineering, you actually quit civil engineering school and you go to the business school.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually it's interesting in the sense that you kind of have the exact science or the medical foundation to many things. So in my case, it made a lot of sense because for whatever reason, I still don't know why, I was just enamored by the financial markets. Like when I was 17 or 18 years old, I knew I wanted to work in investment banking. I kind of wanted to be a trader, literally, dealing in financial instruments. And so it was a degree that made a lot of sense because the kind of the mathematical foundation allowed me to truly understand what was under the hood. Now, in all fairness, actually, I don't think I was an excellent investment banker. I was probably too technical, too mathematical, where I, maybe was overthinking certain items or certain aspects of the job too much, unlike some of my peers who mostly operated from the gut and feeling and actually ended up doing better than I did. So schooling is not everything.
Interesting. No, that's really good advice, actually. So you get out of school. Walk me through your career up until Tatari and getting your MBA. Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it concise. But so look, I was in investment banking for a few numbers of years, and as I mentioned, I did okay, not great, but I quickly came to the realization that it wasn't a job that I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Sure.
For my life, right? It's actually really kind of a young person's job. It's fantastic. You have a lot of responsibility. It's dynamic, all these things, but I also didn't see myself sitting there in front of screens till I was, 40, 50 or older. And so I really wanted to build things. By lack of better inspiration, I felt that doing an MBA would be a good thing for me to do. I ended up at Berkeley. To be really truthful, I had no idea that I kind of landed in the middle of the Silicon Valley in the midst of the dot-com boom and bust.
Sure.
But to my dumb luck, kind of gave me that first exposure to technology. I mean, it took me 2 weeks after arriving here to realize, wow, that was my calling. And in many ways, actually, I feel like I did a bit of an alt control and delete on my career.
Interesting.
I felt like, wow, gosh, I need to get up to speed. I know nothing. I even didn't know what HTML stood for. And so I was hell-bent to almost like reinvent myself. So surely I attended class and stuff like that, but I think the majority of my time at Berkeley was probably spent on kind of like refocusing myself, right? And often you do that in extracurricular activities, right? So I'll make sure that I be the president of the technology club or organize a technology conference, right? Because as a student, there's so little opportunity cost. Actually, I have a very fun story about this, which I love to share with you.
Sure.
So I went through such great lengths to kind of rewrite my resume, right? And if you saw my resume a year after investment banking, I was even to come up with so much stuff that the word investment bank wasn't part of that one pager anymore. And so one day I got invited for an on-campus interview by the CIA.
Wow.
Now, remember, I'm a Belgian national, and so I thought that was strange, but I was very excited. I thought, what an opportunity. And so I went to the interview and we started, and very quickly, within the first few minutes, it comes to light that I am a Belgian national. And then I openly asked the question, well, I didn't know that you guys hired foreigners. And the gentleman was very startled, and he said, well, give me a minute. And he walked out, and then a minute later he comes back. He's like, well, I'm so sorry, but I don't think this is going to work out. And for obvious reasons, right? I couldn't be hired by the CIA. My point here really is that I was able to kind of rewrite and reinvent myself so much that I was able to how do you say that? To spoof the CIA, right? So kind of
interesting.
and yeah, if you can do that, then wow, you know, I could pretty much tell anybody what I was about, right?
Totally, for sure. Interesting. So walk me through being a founder of Shazam and then kind of your stint at Google and YouTube, and then the rest of your career up in Tatari.
Yeah, sure. So Shazam kind of was a byproduct of my schooling at Berkeley. So one of my co-founders, Chris, and I were classmates, became very good friends. We realized that we wanted to do our own company. After loads of ideas, we settled on Shazam, brought in 2 more co-founders, and just went for it.
How did you come up with the idea? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem. Look, we went through a lot of ideas, some of them really good, some of them absolutely laughable. And so Shazam, the idea of Shazam itself was that one was inspired by my business partner, Chris Barton. And so look, after going through a lot of ideas, we had to settle on one. That was it. Big picture here, Kevin, it was probably the craziest ever, right? Because I mean, usually you invent the technology and then you kind of look for a market application, right? Like, well, this would be a fun market application. Oh, let's go out and invent the technology. I mean, I would not recommend this to anybody. It was pure suicidal.
It's good advice, though.
But of course, then if you come up with a company which has a true invention to it, like Shazam, if you are lucky enough that it works and then you beat those small odds, then it can have a fantastic outcome, right? And of course, Shazam is now used by many people around the world. So that's the Shazam story. I got to Google because so after Shazam, I was a few years at Google and YouTube. And that, by the way, that was just my insight or kind of my anticipation that online video was going to be big. Look, it's hard to explain why, but I could just see kind of like, it was easier to shoot films on your smartphones. It was so easy to see bandwidth becoming much bigger for everybody. So online video was the future. I always say I just bet on the wrong horse, right? Because I joined Google instead of YouTube, and we all know what happened there.
Sure.
On the other hand, it was a blessing, right? Because it gave me an opportunity to switch out of Google into YouTube.
Right.
And so that for a number of years. Now the startup call was itching. I wanted to be back in the startup saddle after almost four years at Google, and that's when I joined TrueCar. I did not found TrueCar. It wasn't my idea, but I definitely kind of took the concept, formed the team, built the product, and shipped it. It was a great experience. It's also where I learned about TV advertising and the shortcomings in general in the industry. Right. Then led kind of out of a personal experience to Tatari, right? So here we are. We're a data and analytics company that focuses on measuring and buying TV, whether that's streaming TV or linear TV. We've grown very fast in the last 3 years. We're up to 65 people, 3 offices, and we're operating in a market which is just changing so much. So it's great. Really, so all I can wish for.
So how did you come up with the idea? Because as somebody in the space as well, this is very much needed. If people don't realize that, like the whole side of basically the data side of the whole industry is completely broken. I'm guessing that's why you founded the company, but walk us through how you came up with the idea and why you decided to build it.
Yeah, it's kind of like 2 angles to it. So the first one is absolutely just like you said it. TV till very recently was considered an offline medium, right? Okay. You wouldn't necessarily know who was watching what and stuff like that, and so that has changed. There's a lot more data and better statistical methodologies available today that truly allows us to understand TV advertising better. For example, for any of our clients, let's take a company like a Poshmark or even Procter & Gamble, we can help them understand where their ads perform better or worse, and of course use that to optimize their campaigns, right? And so we kind of like, we saw that if we inject a dose of Silicon Valley or digital pedigree in the world of TV advertising, we can make changes. And so that's part one, right? And that's kind of like tasted and first seen from my experiences at TrueCar. There's a second piece to it, which I should bring up. I think when you start a company, obviously, there's all the steers that say, no, make sure they go after a big market and all these kind of things, and that's absolutely right. But I actually always say, like, if I can kind of like sneak in a unsolicited piece of small advice, is you kind of want to focus on industries that go through a little bit of, I wouldn't say turmoil, but transformation, right? So if you look at Shazam, right? So when I started Shazam in '99, the music industry collapsed from $30 billion per year to about 17, right? And everybody blames piracy. That's not necessarily true, but immediately, right, such major shift allowed a company like Shazam to earn its place a little faster, because we actually had something to offer in terms of promotional value to the publishers, the record labels, and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. If I look at TrueCar, TrueCar was launched in 2008. In 2009, Detroit literally went bankrupt. I mean, apart from Ford, the OEMs and auto manufacturers went out of business, right? And loads of car dealerships went out of business. And so when you start a company, there again, it creates a lot of space to find your way, to find your groove, right? Which is good. TV, I think, is going through a similar transformation. It's not a negative one. If anything, I think TV is going through a golden era. There's better content produced than ever before, right? Just look at what you can. I mean, 5 years ago, we'd all look forward to that one show airing on TV on a particular day time. Yeah. Now, there's more shows that we can. I mean, you can't even get through it anymore, right? Yeah. And so there's more and better TV than ever. People watch more TV, and of course, a lot of it kind of lives on the transformation from cable and antenna distribution to IP distribution. In that come about new opportunities for advertising, better opportunities, and I mean, we put ourselves squarely into that. It's not just a big industry; it's a transforming industry. It's just a perfect storm for us.
100% agree with you. So I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper into the technology. I guess, like, first off, how did you guys get the first version built? Did you raise some money? Did you self-fund, or walk us through that?
Yeah, well, look, so what really happened is I had been at a startup that was kind of acqui-hired by Yahoo.
Okay.
And Yahoo wasn't kind of the right place for me, as you kind of know that you know my background a little bit. But it's a good time to take a breather, right? Because I was maybe a little tired after all of that, and kind of gave me a chance to think, kind of go back to my network of people that I knew, meet other great engineers or entrepreneurs at Yahoo. And so that's when I decided, look, I really want to go after this kind of a TV advertising opportunity. And so this is ironic, but so while I was at Yahoo, there were, people around me that, and a little bit outside Yahoo as well, within my network, that were intrigued by the idea as well. And we decided that over about, 3 or 4 months, we would put what we call an MVP, right? A minimum viable together. But it was kind of like a labor of love and passion. I call the small set of 5-6 engineers the legionnaires, right? Sure. And we just did it, right? And we built it evenings and weekends. And then I'll never forget. I was like, okay, now we go pitch our first client. And in my experience, you better put some gloves and a helmet on because you're about to get it. I know that's the way it goes, right? And then so we sit there, and a half hour into the meeting, they're like, yeah, this other potential client, and they're like, yeah, well, this is good. Yeah, I'm in for $100,000. We're like, what? How do you mean? He's like, yeah, we're in. I'm like, oh, you can't. We're not ready.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah. So it was crazy. Like in the first few weeks, literally, we had to make payments, and oh my God, we weren't even incorporated yet. It was some crazy stuff. But I also realized that we kind of had to hit the nail on the head. So we didn't really raise funding. There was a bit of I had a small fear of a liquidity gap, right, where I would have more expenses faster than kind of the revenue that would come weeks later. So we raised a little bit of money, never really used it. It was mostly from friends and family. I even asked if I could give it back. They smartly said no. And today, so we've grown this company in the right way, with complete control and independence. It's very refreshing. And everybody at the company is a shareholder, and so we're all pretty aligned.
Very cool. So walk us through the platform a bit. How does somebody get on board, and then how do they actually use the platform?
Yeah. So a lot of the people who use the platform are typically brands, okay. Kevin, right? Yeah. Companies, right? And I gave you some examples there, but trying to think of, like, in Canada, we have Article for clients, right? But it could be could be anything, right? A hub of contacts for contact lenses, a Turo, which is kind of a peer-to-peer car rental marketplace, right? And so in many of these cases, these were companies that were not exposed to TV advertising yet, but they were, I would say, experts in digital customer acquisition, right? Using search, Facebook, social media, maybe some form of digital retargeting really well. But when you use those platforms, there's a point where, look, you're maxed out, right? So you say that you spend $1 million on search optimization a month. It's not because you spend $2 million the next month that your sales volume is going to double with it, right? Because you already covered every keyword and most optimal bid under the sun. So where do you go from there? TV flows very nicely into this. TV is kind of the ultimate medium that gives you reach and scale, and so we would actively seek out these companies and say, look, you've done a fantastic job in the digital world. I'm going to help you kind of go to that kind of even a higher order, and I'm going to show you how you can do this with TV. For many people, that's incredibly scary, right? Because TV still lives from the stigma of wasted spend, right? But of course, if you then look at the Tatari platform, where we'll use data and analytics to give it a digital-like experience and feel, starting with the measurement, right, and the accuracy, the timeliness, the transparency in measurement, it gives a lot of these people peace of mind and confidence. And so often they will start with very little money, maybe as little as $100,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but the buying price of TV advertising just a few years ago was a few million. And so what then happens, we can show results, and then when you build confidence, you scale up. Many of our clients now will spend up to $40 million per year on TV successfully, and we started them off from zero. And then, like with any good startup company, right? When we started with the measurements, we learned a lot about how you can optimize TV buying, right? The buying process, again, using data and analytics. So we play a very important role there as well. So here we are.
Interesting. No, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? And you're right. Tracking some of this stuff traditionally has been very hit or miss and or archaic, right? And so being able to use your technology to basically track everything and modify and decide where my ads and stuff are working on TV makes a lot of sense. It's basically what happens online, right? Like if I run a Facebook campaign or a Google ads and one's not working or one's performing better than the other, I just run that one more than the other one, or I move or might change my keywords, right? Like, is that like a fair comparison, or am I off there?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, like, look, the way you got to TV, and as little as a few years ago, right, was with a traditional TV agency, and they kind of follow the program of what I call spray and pray, right? Spend a lot of money and you get lucky. We could not be more opposite. In many ways, actually, I always say that we are kind of to the traditional TV agencies what Uber and Lyft is to yellow cabs, right?
Right.
And so it's we want to do the exact opposite. Use very little spent, demonstrate it actually works, and then scale up from there. Yeah.
Interesting. So how have you guys evolved the product since you guys launched? Because you guys have been around for a few years now.
Yeah, this is the third year. We just celebrated it.
Congrats, that's huge.
Yeah. But I actually think we're still a toddler. I still think we're first minute of a 24-hour day. But here's the exciting piece.
Okay.
Is that the TV, remember how I talked about the TV industry transforming?
Yeah.
Like the TV industry is actually transforming almost faster than we, even as a kind of engineering and data science company at heart, can design and build and ship products for it. It's mind-boggling. To be really honest with you, like at Shazam, right? So now we have kind of built the most basic feature of identifying songs, and we would sit there, well, what's next? And we'd be struggling, and we'd be like, gosh, like, what if we did that? Would people use this? And we weren't sure. At a company like Tatari, it's the exact opposite. TV is changing so fast. We know exactly what we need to build in the next 3 to 5 years. I always say there's no concept of what is called the mythical man month in engineering, if you're familiar with this, right? Let's hire 500 engineers tomorrow. Let's bang it out in the next month, and then we're done. But of course, that doesn't work that way. So, yeah.
Interesting. So I'm curious, how do brands and other people actually structure ads and actually target the right people with your platform? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's this kind of multiple recipes for different meals here, right? So there's many approaches and tacks. And you can kind of like, run them across each other. In the world of traditional TV, right? Linear TV, Kevin, where you may not have the greatest granularity of data. A good model is built. I wouldn't call it trial and error, but it's kind of like test and repeat, right? Where instead of $250,000 on a particular network and hope it works, maybe you sprinkle a little bit left and right and drop all kind of like notions of what should work and kind of let the data and analytics talk and let the data and analytics take over, right? So you could say, gosh, I sell a product geared towards females. It shouldn't work on the NFL, right? And all of a sudden well, how is that possible? That doesn't make sense from a demographic point of view, but it does, and maybe there's multiple reasons for that. Maybe females are watching the NFL, maybe it's a great gifting product, whichever it is, but you let the data and analytics take over, and that's a model that works well. And of course, we as a company, as a data science company, we've exploited incredibly. As we mature in the world of, sorry for the background noise, as we mature in the world of streaming TV, where it gets very, very close to digital, there's other things we can do, right? So there's more data on an IP level available, often kind of paired with third-party data sets. And so now we will often run campaigns which are almost like hyper-targeted, right? We want a particular, 30-year-old male living in a particular area, driving a red car, to give an exaggerated example, and then just with laser precision, target that way, just like you would do it in digital. That's where TV has evolved to. There's still a lot of room to go, but of course, it kind of shows you how you can kind of take a different tack towards the same outcome.
Sure. Well, yeah, because currently, what is it? Nielsen's kind of the standard across at least America and maybe North America. And is there any other real standards? But they seem to give you pretty broad data that is nowhere near the amount of data that you're talking about. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's strange, right? So on the one hand, kind of Nielsen is kind of like that currency on which a lot of stuff is I won't even say measured, but truly evaluated.
Right.
And for CMOs, it's a bit of peace of mind because it allows for an apples to apples comparison, even if it's incorrect, right?
Yeah, fair.
So it's kind of like what the dollar is to the oil industry. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to use Nielsen in our product, right? So a network might use Nielsen to price their inventory, and will gladly work off that Nielsen benchmark pricing, but in the end, we're still going to test it against real data. So real data compared to Nielsen, but instead of using data from a Nielsen panel of 40,000 households, we're going to actually use build a panel that is built on, let's say, 10 million smart TVs or 30 million set-top boxes, much larger, much more objectively collected, much more timely collected. By the way, it's pretty much the same data, just literally 100 times better, and we'll use that to truly calculate outcomes. Does that make sense? So you use both because, right? So let me draw a comparison with oil, right? You're still going to price oil in those dollars, but you might use other techniques to see what the grade of the oil is, right?
Sure. Well, and the other thing too, I guess, the more data you have, the better it is. And if it comes from multiple sources, obviously some's going to be better than others, but it's better to have more data and then cherry pick the best data or figure it out once you have the most amount than having less data and trying to scramble to fill in the holes. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Actually, I always say we have as a company an insatiable appetite for data.
Sure.
Data is our cost of goods sold. I will actually go as far as saying is that no data set is ever perfect. Sometimes, there's multiple vendors of the same type of data,
right.
And we will have no problem buying that same data set from multiple vendors, even if it feels duplicate, because nobody's perfect. And ultimately, it's only by having enough and making sure you kind of find out the nuances and the differences between all of it that you can make you can build meaningful products on top of it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So Obviously you can pull probably better data from the Hulus and the YouTube TVs and the Netflixes and all the other kind of streaming services out there. But how do you provide data for traditional cable, right? Because it's really hard to know how many people are sitting in front of the TV seeing that ad, or how do you solve that? Or have you solved that yet?
Yeah, there is data out there. You can buy data from set-top boxes. Of course, it's all anonymous. Okay. You can buy smart TV data. All smart TVs, they track what you're watching. Okay. I mean, the audio and recording is literally built into the chipsets, and some of these smart TV providers will actually license that type of data out. But again, it's all anonymous. You don't know it was Kevin who watched this particular program at that time. You don't know that. But even on that anonymous basis, that yields enough data to actually then also run your measurement and optimizations.
Sure.
So you'd
Well,
be surprised
go ahead.
there's available. Yeah, I would actually, when people say TV is an offline medium, I disagree. TV has every day, it's a little bit more online.
Sure. Well, and I guess realistically, if you take that data that doesn't know I'm watching and you compare it to the data of somebody similar to me or me on another streaming platform, you could pretty much fill in the gaps with data. Is that fair to say? I get that's a very simplified version of that, but you could at least create some sort of profile around that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yes. I mean, you ultimately kind of go into the large numbers. We're trying to get to outcomes, right? And
Okay,
so,
sure.
so in particular, is did Kevin buy this or that, right? We're just kind of trying to figure out, hey, look, I've got two creatives. Which of
Okay.
those two creatives is the best one, right? And it's not like,
Okay.
did Kevin do it or not? It's more kind of like, well, look, we ran 1 million impressions of creative A and 1 million impressions of creative B. Turns out that the majority of people prefer creative A. So if I know that, I may as well ditch creative B and go with the winner, right? It's that kind of stuff that we're looking out for.
Okay, yeah, like kind of like a A/B testing type stuff.
Oh, totally, totally. The difference here is that in digital, right? So I mean, you turn the knobs and you squeeze out. I mean, if you squeeze out a percent improvement in your search campaign, you're going to high five.
Yeah.
And the world of which we operate, I mean, we get swings of double-digit percentages. And it's like, now you might say, well, that doesn't mean much. Well, hang on a bit. If you're spending $30 million per year and you make it 10% better, that's mega coin, right?
For sure. No, interesting. Today's show is brought to you by FreshBooks, an all-in-one small business invoicing and accounting solution. I've been using FreshBooks for over a decade to send estimates for time and expense tracking, sending invoices, and collecting payments online. Then at tax time, I just generate a report that can be sent off to an accountant. To get a free trial of FreshBooks, please go to buildingthefutureshow.com/FreshBooks. So where do you think the future of kind of the ad space is going to go? Do you have any predictions or things that you see? Because I think it's only going to get better and there's only going to be more data, but there's got to be, I'm curious to know any other thoughts around that.
Gosh, yeah, so many things. I mean, the most obvious one to me is that, there's what is called linear TV, right, which is kind of cable antenna, kind of most characterized by the fact that we all watch at the same time, right? And there's streaming TV, IP delivered, mostly characterized by the fact that we all watch it on demand, right? In the world of TV advertising, the linear TV advertising market is probably 95% of what the streaming TV advertising market is. Combined, they're about $75 billion per year in the US. Those two worlds will tilt. Streaming TV and streaming TV advertising will overtake linear, hands down. I mean, like how fast? Hard to say, but it's quite possible, and it's as little as 5, but at least in 10 years from today, cable networks like we know them today won't exist. It just doesn't make sense to deliver the content via cable, right?
Sure.
If you can deliver on an IP level basis in the industry, in the household. So that's a very, very obvious one. I think for the world of TV advertising, there's going to be a great degree of democratization, right? Because to the extent that you move more towards digital, right, and you get all the advantages around digital in terms of, right, precision in measurement, making smaller buys, right? You and I can start an AdWords campaign for $1 right now.
Sure.
As all of that happens and takes place, I think TV is going to become accessible to just about anybody. It's no longer going to be a big budget brand privilege, right? But you might be a small dentist or local car dealer who can, in a self-serve automated fashion, easily spend $2,000 and buy an ad in your local market during one of the biggest shows. I don't know, The Bachelor. Why not?
Sure.
That I can see that happening. It's fantastic, and obviously now you can see why we at Tatari are so excited about the future of TV and the role we can play in that.
Basically, like it also gives smaller brands the ability to actually advertise probably on some of these shows, right? And networks where before they don't really know what's working and not working, so they probably shy away from it, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, for sure, right? And yeah, absolutely. Or they have to kind of commit to larger budgets before that traditional agency even wanted to have a conversation with them, right? Because there was a
Sure.
lot of tedious manual hand-holding to it. If you can automate, then yeah, I mean, like it's what I call a general democratization, right, of the industry.
No, totally. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, what advice do you give to other entrepreneurs? Because you've done, obviously your own company, you're doing another company, you've worked at big companies, you've sold companies, you've been extremely successful. So what advice do you give people out there?
Gosh, I think you're too kind. So maybe my first piece of advice is don't believe a word I say. I know. So here's a few things that I've learned sometimes the hard way
Sure.
over the last few years, right? So one of them is focus.
Okay.
It's really important to focus. Here's an example. I get a question at Tatari every day. Hey, can you do TV advertising for us? Can you do out-of-home advertising? And by the way, absolutely, we have the data and analytic chops, even the in-house experiences to do all of that, but we don't. I mean, you can just tell from this conversation, we've got to work it out for the 10 years in TV, right? And so let's focus.
Sure.
And I think that's really good. Somewhat related to that is, especially as kind of a younger entrepreneur, I got very distracted by my competition, right? The competition would make an announcement, and then I would try to understand this, and I would be, oh my God, like we don't do this, and now we're wrong, and then we're going to get beaten, and then I would spend 3 hours on their side and trying to figure this out. Here's the reality: they don't know any better than you do.
Sure.
Okay.
100%.
Right, and so the best thing you can do is just. This sounds like borderline arrogant, but the best thing you can do is not to look at it, ignore it, believe in yourself, right, and hold on to those beliefs, and just try to execute on it, right? Which is kind of the same as focus, but competition is a great way to potentially start trashing and moving from the left to the right without accomplishing anything. So the other thing that I've learned, I would say, across all startups, even at Google, is to think big. Okay. Sometimes you have to think stupidly big, right? And you know how the saying goes, like if you want to, land on the moon, you better shoot for the stars.
Sure.
It's so true, right? You got to be a little bit crazy, maybe a little naive, right? And so I still suffer from that every day, right? And so I do, right? Because you get so operationally busy that you don't see the forest through the trees anymore. And it's good if you can take a step back and kind of like, okay, well, can I do better? Can I do bigger? But if you do that, if you dream a little bit bigger, then the chances of actually landing further is so much better. And it's really important to do that. I think, by the way, Americans are really, really good at that. Us Belgians or Europeans in general are really, really bad at that.
Interesting.
Right. And then the last one, which is kind of like very, very obvious, is people. I bet if you could do a perfect correlation study between people and outcomes or company outcomes, it's probably like 100%. And by the way, that means making sure that you have the right founders or co-founders, making sure that you have the right people in your team. I mean, look, that doesn't mean, by the way, that you have to get along personally, but it just means that, right, if you can have that honesty, the integrity, and respect each other, then I mean, like, holy crap, nothing's too big.
No, I think that's actually really good advice, right? Like, yeah, you're right. People don't realize sometimes how important that team needs to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at Shazam, there's 4 co-founders. We went through some like shitty periods, frankly speaking. There's probably 10 reasons why we should have had huge fights and hated each other's guts. None of that is true. We to date, we are the biggest friends. We might not see each other much anymore, right? Everybody's got their own lives, but if you put us in place in the same time on the same night, it's fun. Okay. And
Sure.
just, by the way, any of my other companies, even Tatari today, like I like to invest in people. This matters so much.
No, I think that's actually really good advice, but we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and Tatari?
Yeah, we have a website, Tatari, Tatari. Sorry, that's a bad
Okay.
commercial. Tatari.tv or .com. Either way, we actually just kind of do a complete new rebrand, so we're very proud of that. By the way, it's a great website. It has a lot of information on TV advertising, so you don't even need to talk to us if you kind of want to learn more about TV advertising. Yeah, just drop us a note. Always out there.
Perfect, Philip. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Great
Thank
to
you.
talk to you. Appreciate the opportunity. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.